Hello friends. Welcome to creepy New York City, a land of lake monsters and wild men, hooked killers and flying drop monsters. New York is more than just a city. In fact, it's an entire state, and it's full of its share of weird stories. Many urban legends from New York have inspired novels, movies, TV shows, and even urban legends in other states. This list examines some of the strangest urban legends and ghost stories from New York State, from the eerie tales of its original Dutch settlers to the weird science fictions of its modern-day residents. This video is about 16 New York City urban legends that are sure to surprise you. But before we get started, subscribe to our channel, give it a like and post the video on social media. Alligators in the sewers. This legend comes from 1935, after the New York Times published an article titled, "Alligator Found in Uptown Sewer." It stated that several people killed an 8-foot alligator that was caught in an open manhole on 123rd Street in Harlem. Experts believe the alligator's appearance in the sewer system could very well be real. Greg Young of the Bowery Boys believes that in the 1920s and 40s it was fashionable among wealthy New Yorkers to keep exotic animals. Alligators appeared in the sewer system at that time because their cubs were flushed down toilets by wealthy owners, after which they ended up in the city's vast network of sewers. The same idea is supported by Fran Capo, author of Myths and Mysteries of New York, who speaks of 12 such cases. In the early 2000s, writer Joyce Hackett found herself almost face-to-face with an alligator in an alley in Queens. Anyway, they told this story to The Guardian. He was on the wet pavement, squatting motionless. "I thought of my dog, ready to hunt, and was horrified that the alligator's immobility was just a prelude to kicking the ankle of one of his adversaries." Pirate treasure on Liberty Island. According to legend, ship captain William Kidd buried his booty on this island. He lived for 4 years in New York on Pearl Street, from where he could observe the island. And in 1701 he was hanged in London for piracy. Experts say that the treasure may indeed end up on Liberty Island, but practice shows otherwise. Hundreds of people over the years have tried to find them and to no avail. From this legend comes another one about the ghost of a pirate. It says that 100 after his execution, several soldiers from a neighboring fort went to a psychic to help them find the treasure. On his recommendation, the soldiers began digging on the next full moon. Their shovels reached the skeleton of a man, after which a ghost with a saber in his hand appeared from the hole. But there was no chest. The Empire State Building and the Bermuda Triangle. This legend is quite young. It was born in 2008. While the Bermuda Triangle has terrified sailors for centuries, disabling ships, the Empire State Building has made drivers nervous. In Midtown Manhattan, home to one of the most famous building structures in the world, drivers began to complain. Within a 5-block radius of the Empire State Building, their cars were inexplicably stalling and refusing to start. Roni Jakubowicz, manager of NYC Tire and Auto Care in Hell's Kitchen, says this kind of thing happened every day. "We'd pick up these cars, drive them a few blocks away, and they'd start up," he recalls. There's a more rational explanation, though. Radio signals mounted at the very top of the building's steeple could disable the car's alarm systems and prevent them from being activated. This might have been a perfectly acceptable explanation if it weren't for the fact that the problems with the cars disappeared on the same day, several years later. Super rats after Hurricane Sandy. Another legend of the 21st century. Hurricane Sandy caused billions of dollars in damage to New York City. Its effects are still being felt by residents. One of them told how he heard sounds coming from behind a wall. It was scratching and running. Mark, as he called himself, reported how one day when he entered the kitchen, he saw a rat the size of a small cat crawling across the food shelves. He set traps, which proved ineffective. The guy had no way of knowing how the rats had gotten to the 5th floor of the building he lived in. Afterward, Mark read in reports about rats migrating inland away from the coast from flooded subway tunnels after Hurricane Sandy. There was also a theory that the weaker rats were exterminated, and the surviving rodents raised a new generation of stronger and more resilient super rats. However, Robert Sullivan, author of Rats: Observations on the History and Habitat of the City's Most Unwanted Inhabitants, argues that the likelihood of super rats is the same as the realism of Bigfoot. Cropsy. This legend was born in the 1990s in one of New York City's boroughs, Staten Island. The legend is based on a story about the abandoned Willowbrook Psychiatric Hospital. One of the inhabitants of New York told how in the 90s he was there and saw the walls flooded with blood. The unpleasant picture was complemented by horror stories about a man named Cropsy, who went mad after the death of his son and fled into the woods, vowing revenge. There have been several child abductions in the area since, and Cropsy has become an urban legend. However, Cropsy may have a very real prototype. His name is Andrew Rand, a janitor at this mental institution. He was convicted in 1987 for the kidnapping and murder of a child on Staten Island. He is currently serving a life sentence. Theoretically, he could apply for parole in 2037 if he lives to see it. Haunted Hotel. Some guests at Manhattan's Chelsea Hotel believe that tragic Sex Pistols rocker Sid Vicious still hangs around the place, though he died in 1979. Ed Hamilton, author of Legends of the Chelsea Hotel, Living with Artists and Outlaws of New York's Rebel Mecca, says the elevators mysteriously stop on random floors. Presumably it's Sid's ghost being too lazy to go up the stairs. Mole People. Jennifer Toth, author of the 1993 book, The Mole People, Life in the Tunnels Beneath New York City, says rumors of people living subway date back to the 1800s, when subway construction first began in the city. Patrons at a restaurant on 6th Avenue several years ago reported seeing a mole man. The one allegedly opened a sewer manhole from the inside and crawled out. Some claim that mole men are interfering with the construction of the subway. However, this legend has a very logical explanation. There are no mole people. People do, indeed, live underground. But they are ordinary homeless people. They make further construction of the subway difficult, because it is difficult to kick them out of the subway. And they don't want to go to homeless shelters. Ghost trains carry souls across Hell Gate Bridge. Hell Gate Bridge is a vast steel and stone construction that straddles the East River in NYC and more than lives up to its name, as it is haunted by ghostly trains that carry the souls of the dead. Local legend tells that the trains carry the souls of people who drowned or had their bodies dumped in the river. People who climb the bridge will often see strange lights from trains that never actually arrive, or spectral locomotives dragging cars full of lost souls. Mafia victims, old Dutch explorers, and suicide victims all sit next to each other in the carriages, sharing one last ride to the hereafter. Or perhaps their souls trapped on the trains in a private sort of hell. Either way, the story is no less unnerving for its anachronisms. There's a Loch Ness monster in Lake Champlain. Lake Champlain is the 6th largest freshwater lake in North America, straddling the borders of New York, on the west, Vermont, to the east, and Quebec, Canada, to the north. Its shores are home to numerous quaint New England towns and tourist hotspots, and the region brims with a rich history stretching back to pre-European settlement. The waters of Lake Champlain are hundreds of feet deep in some places, and connected to the Atlantic Ocean through a network of rivers and smaller lakes, providing plenty of opportunities for mysterious swimming beasts to make their way into the area. And this seems to have been going for a very long time, as there is at least one monster known to be living in Lake Champlain. Local Native American cultures, including both the Abenaki and the Iroquois, shared legends of a lake monster with European explorers very early on, a creature that the Abenaki called Tataskok. The earliest recorded sighting of this beast is ascribed to none other than Samuel de Champlain himself, the man after whom the lake is named. In 1609, he reportedly witnessed a 20-foot serpent thick as a barrel and a head like a horse. Encounters with Champ, or Champy, as the monster is now called, continue to the present day. But perhaps the most famous sighting occurred in 1977 when Sandra Mancy photographed the monster while having a picnic with friends and family. In the photo, Champ looks an awful lot like his more famous colleague Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. However, it's important to note that he's been around a lot longer. Nessie was first spotted in 1933, more than 300 years after Samuel de Champlain's encounter with Champ. So, by all rights, Champ should be more famous. Montauk, NY, is a center of alien contact, mind control, and time travel experiments. If you've seen Stranger Things on Netflix, a lot of this is going to sound familiar. And there's a good reason for that. The strange things that happened, and may still be happening, at Montauk, NY, were the inspiration for Stranger Things. Montauk is a long-time center of weirdness. Its old military base, Camp Hero, now abandoned and serving as a state park, is said to have been the site of top-secret, black book experiments in the 1960s and through the 1980s that involved alien contact, psychic experiments with children, and even time travel. Most of what we know about these bizarre happenings comes from the accounts of Preston Nichols, an electrical engineer who claims he worked at the site during that period of time. According to Nichols, the facility was built to turn kidnapped children into psychic soldiers, using technology supplied from alien spacecrafts. Nichols says he interacted with at least 3 different alien species at Camp Hero, and that the research teams working there ripped a hole in space-time in 1983. No word yet on whether a kid named 11 escaped from them. Upstate New York hosts a haunted Air Force base. Plattsburgh Air Force Base, in Plattsburgh, NY, where else, has been associated with many strange occurrences over the years, but since it is no longer an active military base, its ghostly pedigree has been kicked up a notch. There are many haunted spots at the old base, including the old gym, which was once used as the base morgue, and where witnesses have heard screaming and pounding, and at the cemetery, where ghost soldiers are said to march through the night. There have also been reports of spirits reenacting battles from the French and Indian War, and a Revolutionary War-era ghost who guards the base entrance. There's even a notorious building 666, which once served as the base crematorium and now hosts a revolving door of soldierly ghosts, according to reports by some security guards. A ghost ship sails the Hudson River. Since the days of old New Amsterdam, local people in the Hudson Valley have been reporting a mysterious ship with no known flags that sails down the river, bringing violent storms in its wake. The ship often moves against the tide, and nearly always appears to be without a crew. Then, within a few hours of its passing, powerful thunderstorms rock the area. The ship's origins are unclear. Some believe it to be a remnant of the Half Moon, the ship that Henry Hudson himself piloted on his journey up the river. Others, especially the old Dutch settlers, believe it has been summoned by evil fairies to bring ruin and menace to the area's humans. Interestingly, there are no reports of the ship appearing just before Hurricane Sandy, though modern sightings do turn up from time to time. The White Lady of Rochester searches eternally for her lost children. Ladies in white are common ghost manifestations around the world, and New York State is no exception. They have one in Rochester who endlessly searches Durand Eastman Park for her missing daughter in the company of her 2 spectral dogs. The most popular version of the story says that the White Lady of Rochester is the ghost of a woman from the early 1800s whose daughter was kidnapped, raped, and murdered by a local farmer. The mother searched the marshy land day and night trying to discover where the perpetrator had hidden the body, but she never succeeded. Eventually, she succumbed to despair and threw herself off of a cliff into the waters of Lake Ontario. Her 2 dogs pined for her on the shore until they, too, joined her in death shortly after. Now, all 3 of them haunt the park forever searching for the daughter's missing corpse. Sometimes, she makes trouble for men who visit the park, but women always remain unmolested by her and her ghost hounds. Upstate New York is a hotbed of Bigfoot activity. Most people associate Bigfoot with the Pacific Northwest, but in fact, there's evidence that the creatures are common in many stretches of pristine wilderness across North America, including the old forests of upstate New York that cluster around Lake Champlain in Essex and Warren counties. Many people have reported hairy wild men in the area over the decades, but one unlucky fellow encountered Bigfoot close up twice in the span of just a few years, and both run-ins with the creature were terrifying. The first happened on June 25, 1989, when Scott David Harris and 2 friends were looking for one of their brothers, who was lost in the woods late at night. Walking along a railroad track that followed Lake Champlain's shoreline, they heard awful thrashing, growling, and metal-ripping noises coming from the south bank of the trail. And whatever it was seemed to hear them, too, because the noises it was making stopped, and it came over to check them out. Harris couldn't get a good look at the creature in the dark, but as his friends ran off, he stuck around long enough to feel its breath and realize it was a huge and smelly beast. When he ran, it chased him, and only stopped its pursuit when Harris and his friends broke out of the woods and onto the nearby road. But Bigfoot wasn't done with Harris yet. A few years later, in 1993, Harris was parked on a trail near Westport, NY, with another friend, waiting for a party to start, when he saw a huge, black, hairy creature coming out of the woods and reaching for the car's rear door. Harris alerted his friend, who immediately drove away, and Harris saw the creature rear up in the car's lights with glowing red eyes. A floating blob monster haunted the woods of Kinderhook, NY. Bigfoot isn't the only forest monster in the wilds of New York. There's also a flying blob. Most accounts of the Kinderhook monster come from the 1960s, and at least 6 different people claim to have encountered the creature. The being is described as an amorphous, white shape that floated above the ground and maneuvered through treetops in the woods near Kinderhook, NY. It was also capable of releasing a high-pitched whistling noise, which is what first drew the attention of witnesses to it. In one encounter, the blob creature watched 2 young children playing in the lake until they noticed it peering from behind a tree, and they ran away in fear. In a second encounter, a lone hiker saw it floating down the hill towards him and also ran in fear. He came back later armed and with a friend in tow, but numbers and weapons served them not. Both men saw the creature moving through the branches of the trees above them and again fled in terror. The third recorded encounter involved 2 teenaged campers, who described it as appearing as a bell-shaped white thing that was moving around outside their tent one night. Just after they spotted it, the creature fled into the woods, and it hasn't been reported since. There's a cursed apartment on West 57th Street in Manhattan. As a city of over 8 million people, New York City is replete with haunted buildings, and even just haunted parts of buildings. Take the case of the penthouse at 57 West 57th Street, for instance. It's said to be haunted by the ghosts of 2 lovers who bickered each other to death. It started with the guy who invented spark plugs, Albert Champion. In 1922, he married a young showgirl named Edna Crawford, who proceeded to embarrass Champion by having an affair with a fellow much younger than Champion, a Frenchman named Charles Brazel. Brazel allegedly murdered Champion in Paris while Crawford convinced the police that her husband had died of a heart attack. Because the police believed her, she was entitled to collect on Champion's will, and used her inheritance to buy the penthouse at 57 West 57th Street, where she and Brazel shacked up together. But Brazel turned out to be an extremely jealous lover and often kept Crawford locked up in the penthouse. One day, he beat her to death with a telephone, after which her bodyguards threw him out of the window to his death. Of course, how Brazel was able to keep Crawford prisoner, let alone beat her to death, when she had bodyguards has never been explained. The next person to live in the penthouse was Carlton Alsop, a wealthy socialite. Alsop claimed to have heard the ghostly sounds of Crawford and Brazel arguing, and of Crawford's high heels walking around. Eventually, the haunting drove Alsop mad. His wife left him, he committed himself to a sanitarium, and even his dogs had nervous breakdowns. People continue to report the haunting by the bickering ghosts to this day, and the penthouse is a popular stop for ghost hunters in NYC. Friends, if you liked our video, but you haven't subscribed to us yet, subscribe right now and post the video on social networks. There will be a lot of interesting things in the next episodes. See you soon. Bye.